Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
You ready to dive into another case?
Always.
Today we're heading to Marshall County, Indiana,
Okay.
a small town haunted by a cold case that has puzzled investigators for decades. The unsolved murder of Darlene Hol.
A case that has left a family searching for answers and a community grappling with those unanswered questions.
We're going to try to piece together what happened to Darlene.
Right.
We've got the original police reports, court documents,
Okay.
even firsthand accounts from Darlene's daughters who have been fighting for justice for their mom for years.
It's a story with more twists and turns than a backwoods Indiana road.
So let's set the scene. Rewind the clock back to 1984,
All right.
August 17th to be precise.
Is that it?
It's a peaceful summer evening in a small town,
Mm-hmm.
but that peace is shattered when Darlene Hol is found murdered
Oh, wow.
in a wooded area not far from her home.
So what did the crime scene look like?
Gruesome.
Yeah.
Darlene had been brutally beaten,
Oh.
her body bound and partially clothed.
Robbery, maybe?
Initially, they thought robbery, but the brutality of the crime scene just suggests something much darker.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, put yourself in the shoes of the detectives on this case.
Okay.
You're facing a grieving family,
Right.
a community that is on edge, and a pile of evidence
Yeah.
that just doesn't seem to add up.
So where do you even begin with something like that?
They started with the obvious, right?
Yeah.
Interviewing family, friends, neighbors,
Mhm.
looking for anyone who might have seen something, heard something unusual in the days leading up to Darlene's death.
But small towns have a way of keeping secrets.
Exactly.
Right.
And it wasn't long before the investigation just hit a wall.
That's gotta be frustrating.
It is.
For everyone involved.
Especially for Darlene's daughters.
Yeah.
They've been dealing with that frustration for over 3 decades.
So who are the investigators looking at?
Well, one of the first names that came up was Kenneth McCune Jr.,
Okay.
a man of the past.
What do you mean?
2 years before Darlene's murder, there was a home invasion and attempted rape in the same area.
Oh, wow.
The victim, we'll call her Pam, lived just a stone's throw from Darlene.
Hold on. McCune attacked someone before Darlene's murder.
He did.
And they knew about it.
They did.
That's unsettling.
And for years, that attack on Pam remained unsolved.
Really?
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
In 1987, while McCune was serving time for an unrelated crime,
Okay.
police finally linked him to Pam's attack through phone records and DNA evidence.
So they had this guy,
Yes.
McCune, who's already proven to be capable of violence against women.
And he was living in the same area as Darlene.
Did they start looking into a possible connection to Darlene's murder?
Absolutely.
Wow.
They started digging into his background, looking for any overlap with Darlene's case. What they uncovered was a string of unsettling coincidences.
Oh, lay it on me.
Okay, for starters, McCune worked on a farm that was practically next door to where Darlene's body was found. He had access to a variety of vehicles.
True.
His job at a used car dealership.
Access to cars?
Right.
Okay, that's something to look into, especially since witnesses reported a suspicious vehicle near Darlene's house around the time of her murder.
And it gets even creepier.
Okay, how?
Remember, witnesses described the suspect vehicle as having a shoddy paint job,
Right.
almost like it was done in someone's backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Well, medical records show that McCune was in the business of spray painting cars the very summer Darlene was killed.
Spray painting cars? Was that even a thing back then?
It wasn't unheard of,
Okay.
especially for someone working with used cars. But it's a detail that would have caught the investigators' attention.
Given the witness descriptions of the vehicle?
Exactly.
So, proximity to the crime scene, access to vehicles,
Yes.
and the possibility of a poorly painted car?
Did they confront McCune with this?
They did. They
Got it.
questioned him extensively about Darlene's murder.
Okay.
He denied any involvement.
He maintains his innocence to this day.
So, suspect number one, a man with a history of violence.
Oh.
Some very unsettling connections to the case,
All right.
but no confession, no concrete evidence to tie him directly to Darlene's murder.
Where do we go from here?
Well, as they continued to dig, another name emerged.
Okay.
A name that sent chills down their spines.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
John Paul Clark.
John Paul Clark. Who's he? Why is he on the radar?
Get this. Just 12 days before Darlene's murder, John Paul Clark escapes from jail in Rockville, Indiana.
Okay.
And he wasn't in for some petty crime either.
What was he in for?
attempted murder and attempted rape.
Wow, the timing of his escape, it lines up almost perfectly with Darlene's murder.
It does.
Did the investigators know about this escape?
They did. An anonymous letter sent right after the murder tipped them off to Clark's escape and suggested a possible connection to Darlene's case.
And what did this letter say?
It specifically mentioned his violent past,
Okay.
particularly his use of a fireplace poker as a weapon.
Wait, a fireplace poker?
Yes.
That's the murder weapon in Darlene's case.
It was.
And that's not the only chilling detail.
No.
Years before his escape, Clark was charged in a juvenile case for beating and sexually assaulting a girl
With
a fireplace poker.
That's disturbing.
Did they ever question him about Darlene's murder?
This is the frustrating part. There's no record of them ever directly questioning him about Darlene's case.
So we've got two suspects now,
Me do.
both with violent histories,
Yeah.
unsettling coincidences that tie them to the case.
This is already a lot of twists and turns.
There's more.
Oh, there is.
A lot more. We have a third suspect to consider.
Okay.
Darrell Lemon.
Darrell Lemon.
He was staying with a couple in Argus the summer that Darlene was murdered.
Okay.
And then there's this whole mystery surrounding a property with a buried bus.
Buried bus.
Yeah.
This is getting interesting.
We'll have to delve into that next time.
Sounds good to me. Okay, so we've got these two guys, right? McCune and Clark, both with a history of violence against women, both with eerie connections to Darlene's case. But as the investigation continued, a third suspect emerges.
A third suspect.
Yeah.
All right, give me the rundown.
His name was Darrell Lemon, and he was staying with a couple in Argus during that summer of 1984.
Darrell Lemon, suspect number 3.
That's right.
So what's his deal? How does he fit into all of this?
Like our other suspects, Lemon had some unsettling coincidences surrounding him. A tipster claimed that he was acting strangely around the time of the murder.
Okay, so strange behavior.
Right. And the tipster alleged that Lemon had access to a green car, similar to the one described by witnesses who saw a vehicle speeding away from Darlene's house that night.
Interesting. So we've got a possible suspect in the vicinity and a car that might match the description.
Exactly.
Did investigators look into him?
They did, but the couple who was housing Lemon initially downplayed his involvement.
So they didn't notice anything unusual about him.
That's what they said at first, but as the investigators pressed for more details, a much darker picture started to emerge.
Darker how? What kind of details?
The couple admitted that Lemon's behavior had become increasingly erratic in the weeks following Darlene's murder.
Erratic, meaning?
They claimed he became controlling, abusive, even physically harming their children.
Oh, wow.
They also revealed that he'd suddenly changed his appearance after Darlene's murder, shaved his beard, cut his hair, almost like he was trying to disguise himself.
Okay, that's suspicious. It sounds like he was trying to avoid being recognized. Did the couple give any information about his whereabouts at the time of the murder?
Yeah, they told investigators that Lemon had asked them to drive him around on back roads late at night, often acting nervous and looking over his shoulder.
Back roads late at night definitely sounds like he was trying to stay off the main roads. Did he ever mention Darlene or the murder?
According to the couple, he repeatedly asked about the ongoing investigation, almost like he was obsessed with the case.
Okay, so we've got a guy acting suspicious, changing his appearance, asking to be driven around back roads, and obsessing over the investigation.
Right, it's all very strange.
Did they bring him in for questioning? What did the police do with this information?
That's where things get a little frustrating. There's no detailed record of those interviews, but we do know he was questioned.
So we've got 3 possible suspects now.
Yep.
Each with their own set of unsettling connections to Darlene's murder, but no concrete answers yet.
That's right, but remember that property with the buried bus we mentioned earlier?
Oh yeah, the buried bus. Remind me how that fits into all of this.
The prosecutor in Darlene's case, Nelson Chipman, he kept mentioning this property, hinting that it might hold some crucial clues.
Clues about Darlene's case.
He even drew a map connecting Darlene's house, the home of another murder victim named Brandy Peltz.
Wait, another murder victim. Who's Brandy Peltz?
She was an 11-year-old girl, tragically murdered in 1986, just 2 years after Darlene.
So 2 murders, 2 years apart, and the prosecutor thinks they might be connected.
That's what he seemed to be suggesting, with this property and the buried bus serving as a possible link.
This is getting even more eerie. 2 murders, a buried bus. It's like something out of a horror movie.
And it gets weirder. Chipman was really fixated on this bus. He even mentioned having dreams about finding the murder weapon, that fireplace poker, hidden inside it.
Wait, the prosecutor was having dreams about finding the murder weapon? That's more than creepy. It suggests he knows more than he's letting on.
Right, and you'd think with all of this, he'd be pushing to search that property.
So did they search it? What happened?
That's the strange part. Chipman claimed that the property had been thoroughly searched in connection with Brandy Peltz's murder, but he couldn't provide any details or records to back that up.
So he's saying they searched the property, but there's no proof. That's a huge red flag. Did they try to verify his claims?
They dug into the records, spoke to investigators on both cases, and there's no documentation of any search on that property.
The prosecutor was misleading them about a potentially crucial piece of evidence. Why would he do that?
It's a question that haunts the entire investigation. Was it incompetence? A cover-up? Was he just so fixated on his theories that he convinced himself a search had taken place?
I'm starting to think this whole buried bus thing is a deliberate distraction, a smokescreen.
That's what the podcast team thought, too. They became even more determined to uncover the truth about the property, who owned it, what was really buried there, and why Chipman was downplaying its significance.
So did they find out who owned it?
They did, but it wasn't who Chipman said it was. He claimed it belonged to the Lemons, our third suspect, but when they pulled the property records, they discovered it belonged to a family named Parsons.
Wait, she got the owner wrong? That's not a minor detail. It could completely derail the investigation.
Exactly, and it led the team down a whole new rabbit hole, a family shrouded in secrecy with a history of violence and possible connections to not just one, but maybe even both murders.
The plot thickens. We've got 3 suspects, a buried bus, and now a whole new family to consider. Who are the Parsons? What's their connection to all of this?
Well, that's a story for another time, my friend. We'll dive into the Parsons family history next time.
So last time, we were talking about this property, and the prosecutor had told us it belonged to the Lemons.
Right, our third suspect.
But
But it turns out he was wrong.
he was completely wrong. It belonged to a whole other family,
The Parsons family.
the Parsons.
And they had a history in the area that was pretty disturbing.
Okay, so who were these Parsons? What kind of family are we talking about here?
Well, there were 4 brothers living on that property
Okay.
at the time of Darlene's murder,
Right.
and they had a reputation.
A reputation. Like what? Give me the details. What kind of reputation did they have?
Well, people in town whispered about them.
Whispered. What kind of whispers were we talking about?
They were known to be rough around the edges, to put it mildly.
Okay, so a family with a shady past.
Right. They had a history of petty crimes, fights, just a general disregard for the law.
But how does that connect to Darlene's murder? Was there any evidence linking them to her?
It's murky, but the podcast team found some interesting information in the case files.
Like what?
There were a handful of anonymous tips that mentioned the Parsons brothers.
Okay.
One tip even claimed that one of the brothers had a violent past.
What do you mean? What did it say?
It specifically mentioned that he had done time at youth center for cutting someone up.
Cutting someone up. That's a whole different level of violence.
Right, and remember those rumors about things being buried on the Parsons property?
The rumors, yeah.
Well, some folks whispered that it wasn't just old cars and junk.
What else was it then?
They hinted at other things being hidden there, things that were never meant to be found.
A family with a dark secret, whispers of violence, a buried bus. This is like something out of a true crime novel.
And it gets even more strange. The podcast team tried to contact the Parsons brothers
To ask them about all of this.
to ask them some questions, but it was like they vanished. They couldn't find any trace of them.
So they just disappeared. That's definitely suspicious, especially with a murder investigation, and their name keeps popping up.
It is, and remember, they weren't strangers to law enforcement.
So they had a history with the police.
The podcast team uncovered police reports, court records detailing the brothers' run-ins with the law.
So they had a history, but nothing directly linking them to Darlene's murder. What about this buried bus? Did they ever actually search the property?
That's the frustrating part. They couldn't find any official records of a search warrant, no evidence collected from the property.
No searches, no evidence, and the Parsons brothers are gone. It's almost like they were tipped off.
Maybe someone warned them to disappear?
Before anyone could put the pieces together.
It's possible small towns can be tight-lipped.
Especially when it comes to protecting their own.
It's possible someone, maybe even someone within law enforcement, was shielding the Parsons.
Intentionally burying the truth along with that bus.
It's something to think about.
So we're left with more questions than answers. 3 suspects, a prosecutor who can't seem to keep his story straight, and now a missing family.
It's a lot to unravel.
How do you even begin to crack a case like this? A case that's been cold for decades. A case that seems to be built on deception and misdirection.
The podcast team decided they couldn't rely on the official investigation.
So what do?
They decided to take a risk, to visit the Parsons property themselves,
To find the bus.
to see if they could find any clues, any evidence that might have been overlooked.
So they're basically walking into the lion's den.
They didn't even know if there was a lion in there.
What happened? What did they find?
A ghost town, the house boarded up, paint peeling, weeds everywhere, like a silent sentinel guarding a dark secret.
Did they find the bus?
They searched for hours using metal detectors, shovels, following the rumors and whispers, but nothing.
Nothing.
No bus, no hidden vehicles, no Parsons brothers, like no one had ever disturbed the ground.
So after all that, they come up empty-handed.
It was a major setback, no doubt.
It's got to be heartbreaking, especially for Darlene's daughters, after fighting for answers for so long.
It was, but the team wasn't ready to give up. They believed the truth was out there, buried under years of time, misinformation, small-town secrets.
So what do they do then?
They went back to the beginning, back to the evidence, the timelines, the witness statements.
What did they find?
They noticed something, a connection, a pattern that linked all three of our suspects.
All three. McCune, Clark, and Lemon.
A pattern that suggested a possible conspiracy, something bigger than just one murder.
A conspiracy. This is insane, but unfortunately we're out of time for today.
Here we are.
Listeners, we've laid out the facts, but the puzzle remains unsolved. Was it one of these men or something more?
What do you think? Was it a crime of opportunity or a calculated act?
Share your thoughts, your theories. Let's keep this conversation going.
And don't forget to subscribe. We'll be back with more deep dives into the world's most compelling mysteries.
Until then, keep searching for the truth.